Welcome to the Howell Business Beat, where we delve deep into the dynamic world of entrepreneurship, innovation, workforce, talent, economic development, and more, bringing you the latest insights and strategies to thrive in today's competitive business landscape. Join us as we interview industry leaders and explore the trends shaping the future of commerce. Today, we're joined by guest Kevin Suboski, Professional EOS Implementer, to discuss EOS and the entrepreneurial lifestyle. And I'm joined also by my co-host, Diane Samples. Thank you guys for joining us today in studio.
Oh, I'm excited to be here today. This is exciting stuff.
It is. And, you know, this isn't the first time that we've had a discussion with Kevin on our podcast. However, this is the first time that we are in person. So that's exciting.
True story. Yeah. Love the facilities. Yeah.
And so Kevin, you know, you weren't able to join us in person last time because you were on the road. You live a very unique lifestyle. And you shared a little bit about that last time you were here. But before we dive into that, I'd love for you to share what you do with those that are listening today.
What do? I work with small business owners and help them get more of what they want out of their business. And so I work that two different ways. So I'm a professional EOS implementer. EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system. It's a structure for running your business. Companies that have a leadership team, I help them implement EOS. For smaller companies that want to get to the point where they have a leadership team, I have a different program to help them get to the point where they're big enough where EOS makes sense for them.
So how did you, I guess, get to where you're at? Because I think that's an important piece of the story.
Well, I think it is an important piece of the story, because we were talking at the beginning, we're talking about these big goals for entrepreneurs and everybody gets daunted by them. And it's like, no, it's a long-term story. I worked at Sun Microsystems. I was an IT person out of college, and I got to go out to dinner with a customer of mine who was venture funded. And so I got to listen to this 30,000 foot strategy conversation with the venture capitalists. I was in my 20s, and I said, that's awesome. I'd love to do that someday. And that's haunted me ever since. It's like, I'm going to do that. And every step I took in my career from that point on was with the view of how do I get to that place in the long term? And so I knew that I needed to have a business. And so I actually started a business, but I was so unqualified at the time that I immediately was aware that I don't know how to market. So I have to learn how to market. And I knew that I couldn't run a business without having employees, because the economics doesn't work out. And so I got a job at Sun Microsystems. And then I ultimately started my own business because I knew I had to, right? So to get to that long-term goal. And I studied hard to be a CEO. So I was always fascinated with entrepreneurship and business. And I'm probably,
I have to ask,
yes,
I'm
please.
So curious. So when you were in your 20s and you had that conversation, what were you doing at that time?
Yeah, I got the
How
timeline.
did you get there?
Yeah, I got the timeline messed up a little bit there because so Sun Microsystems, I was a pre-sales technical support engineer. So I was a techie. I wanted out of tech. And so I was in pre-sales. So I was working with customers, and I had a customer that was, this is one of my best things at Sun Microsystems. They had a conference in Maui, and they needed someone.
I always say that we need to do like team building in Hawaii, or just, go shadow some other chambers or.
Yeah, they needed me to set it up and then be on call. And so I hung out on the beaches in Maui for a week.
Well, that sounds pretty great.
And at night, went to dinner with the venture capitalists traveled with us. It was World Computer Corporation years ago.
What a great experience in your 20s.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. Yep.
I mean, anytime, really.
Yeah, I'd like to go there now. Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, I kind of got us off track there, but I had to know what you were doing at that time. And so you got the bug, you caught this bug, and you were intrigued and really became invested in wanting to become an entrepreneur yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always had this sense of, why not try to do the best that I can do? You know what I mean? Why not? I've worked at EDS before, and it was kind of like, I'm done with this. And so I've always been ready to move on, fairly adventurous, right? You were talking about my lifestyle. So I'm willing to take risks and move into places and step up. And so that's created a lot of opportunities for me. And I think that's pretty consistent. I mean, that's sort of the general genetic profile of an entrepreneur, I think. They see something in the world and they're the ones that are going to be bold and go after it, and they see a problem that needs to be solved. And that's, the more I look at it, the more I'm pretty wired as an entrepreneur.
So as an entrepreneur, what would you say your passion is?
So my personal passion is other entrepreneurs. And while I was at Sun Microsystems, we had a district meeting, and the district sales manager said, it was like, what's your New Year's resolution? And his was to be more Bill. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. Be more Bill. And so I said, yeah, I want to be more Kevin. What does that mean? And so it was like, again, in my 20s, it was like, about authenticity. I adore authenticity. I adore people that are, kind of open and honest and vulnerable, and really trying to figure out who they are, what they want out of life, and not just following the path that the culture gave them. So when I had an IT business, I grew it to 30 people, and I came to find I didn't love mid-level IT managers in big corporations, because you can't be a real person in a big company. You have to be a role. And so I was always sitting in front of people. I wanted to know the person, and I kept poking at them. And they're like, they would like, no, I'm not here. I'm a manager. And that was smart. That's smart for them. It's dangerous to be authentic in a big corporation. And so it's like, when I was done with that, it's like, who do I love? Who do I want to work with? I adore that about entrepreneurs. I love authenticity. I love the entrepreneurship, and capitalism starts with an offer of help. Mm-hmm. You can't get money first. You've got to be in a position where it's like, how can I be of value to someone else who's feeling some pain or discomfort, where their current offer isn't serving them well, that I can do better. And so it starts with empathy, some compassion, some willingness. And I adore that. And, entrepreneurs are change makers. And so if I can help those guys be more effective in their endeavors, I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, it's freaking awesome for me.
You mentioned that you're wired to be an entrepreneur, and that there's a certain just innate wiring within that entrepreneurial spirit. So let me ask you, is there hope for those that aren't wired that way? Is this a learned skill? Is this something that you can go out and teach to someone to kind of create that, that little more, I guess, wild side opening up, wild side.
That's a
Can
great
you
question.
teach that to somebody, or
I'm not
or is there
sure.
no hope?
I don't know. I just don't like that. I have trouble with the frame of that question, which is like, so they already have hope. Their hope is to be them to the best that they can, whatever theirs is. I'm not, how do you become something that you're not more? It's just like, my thing would be like, where's your brilliance? What's your superpower?
I like that.
Because in a way, people ask me, should I start a business? And my answer is like, no. Don't do it unless you have to. You know what I mean? I'm in business not because, I'm trying to do this thing. It's because it's who I am. And if I look back, life would have been a lot better if I had just stayed at Sun Microsystems, moved up the chain. But I would have been miserable.
I was going to say that's kind of a catch-22 because it's all right. Yeah, it would have been a lot better in what ways?
Right.
And then,
right.
So exactly. So could you define that a little bit more, maybe for those listening, and what you've built and how that compares to how you feel that it would have gone?
I think one of the biggest challenges of modern life is that we have so much comfort. I think it's killing us, right? There's so much that they're learning about hormesis that is like biological, comfort is killing us. So it would have been more comfortable. Mm-hmm. I could have accumulated more money. Statistically, staying in a corporation, you're going to make more money in a life. Statistically, you look at business owners, because a lot of them don't make it. Mm-hmm. So probably had more money. I would have, so it wouldn't have worked for me. I wish I could be the kind of person for whom that would work. It wouldn't have been, because I would have been frustrated. And for me to teach someone to do what I do, they would be in my situation and just hating themselves and wanting nothing to do with it. Sorry. And
it's okay. It keeps it authentic.
Right on. That's a client for tomorrow. I'm wondering why he's calling. So I'm going like, oh, shit. You know what I mean? If you had a job at a company, you wouldn't be going, yeah, whatever. And so there's a book called Driven that really talks about a genetic basis for kind of who I am. And if somebody's not who that is, then I don't recommend it. Now, I would say that with a certain caveat, because when you have a business, I think that there's two really broad skill sets that are required for success. There's entrepreneurship and business. And to me, entrepreneurship is that set of practices where you witness the marketplace, you see breakdowns where people's concerns are not being addressed by the current practices. And then you innovate, come up with a new practice and bring it out. So you're adding more value. You're increasing value of offers. That's an entrepreneur increases the value of offers in the marketplace. A business person facilitates the transactions they facilitate the mechanics that allow you to transact with people and produce a profit, right? So there's a part of business that entrepreneurs don't like. I'm not, we don't like finance. And so a lot of those people that aren't entrepreneurs, they can be great business people. And this is why we have franchises, right? Because you can be, that's sort of that path. If you want to go to business, you have other pragmatic approaches to recognize maybe you're a business person,
Can you be both?
I was just going to say
I think they're very competing. They're very different, because I think they're very different drives. When I meet Grant Cardone is a business person. When I talk to people who love Grant Cardone, it's like, you're a business person. It's all about making money, and everything you're doing is about making money. That's not the stuff that drives entrepreneurs. Well, you're smiling.
I feel like they can be both, because if you
have to do both.
I was going to say, you almost have to have the elements of both.
And I feel like when you're living your best entrepreneurial life,
you have to do both.
Are going to be achieving both to some degree.
Yeah, but you're going to have basically what you're doing. And I'm a big fan of first pursue your strengths, but then you need practices to mitigate your weaknesses. And so whichever you are. And so in EOS world, this tracks really well with roles in the way that we talk about EOS. We call the CEO visionary, the COO integrator. So visionary integrator. And so visionary pretty well tracks with entrepreneur, integrator pretty well tracks with business person. And so if you need them both, we're typically better at one, and you've just got to figure out how to suck it up and do it. I wouldn't consider myself a great business person, right? And you'll talk to entrepreneurs. One of my clients, he talks about how long it takes him to invoice his clients. You know what I mean? That's a classic visionary thing. I did the work. It was great. Woohoo. Did you invoice them? Oh, I'll get to it. Business person. They're like, what's the matter with you? And so, yeah, those tend to be weaknesses. You need to figure out how to mitigate them. And ultimately the best combination of that is like a business with one of each. That's why that EOS, we call it rocket fuel, that combination of the visionary and integrator.
Because and again, I'm kind of classifying, but most entrepreneurs own businesses, or they are running a business, or so you do have to have those, either you're to a point where you can hire someone, your COO, to do that for you, or you have to become inept at doing that.
Yes. You have to. So what I'm talking about is what's your God-given talent? What do you, where's your flow? What's your superpower? What are you great at? And if you're great at entrepreneurship, most likely you're going to have to figure out and hold yourself to a standard to do that other work and do it well, because you have to do it, but you're just not going to love it. Whereas, there are people who are great business people, but they're not great entrepreneurs. And that's still a gap, right? So who's really improving the offer? Who's making sure the customer is really happy? That's really sort of the entrepreneur kind of, how are you consistently increasing the value? The visionary is going to increase the profit margin, right? So it's like more and more and more and more value. But if you don't have that integrator, if you don't have that business person, you may not get any money at all. So it's like you need them both. And so if you're a business person, where do you get your inspiration? Where do you get your sense of innovation? How are you forcing yourself into the situation? How do you be around people that are like that, right? So what's your training? So if you're an entrepreneur, a lot of times those guys will have coaches that are kind of business people. If you're a business person, your coach should be kind of entrepreneurial. If that makes sense.
Well, I guess that goes back to my original question of, is that something that is teachable? Like taking that middle manager who wants to break out of the mold and has a passion, but maybe isn't that personality that's just going to take a leap of faith. They're a planner. They have to have these processes in place, but they have that passion. So is it is that where you partner up with the entrepreneurial spirited person and form those partnerships, or how does someone break out of that, kind of break into themselves, their authentic self? Is that something you can teach somebody?
They're all skills, right? So I could learn ballet right now. Someone could teach me ballet. There's a certain sort of limit to my capacity I'm never going to become Baryshnikov. So you can teach people these skills. Gino Wickman started up a thing called the Integrator Mastery Forum to teach people how to be integrators, to teach people how to be business. I have an MBA, right? And I also studied with an organization teaching entrepreneurship, different curriculum. And so Gino started up this thing saying it was for integrators. I said, so when are you going to start? Are you going to teach visionaries? And he said, can't help those guys. They're crazy. You can't teach that. It's harder to teach the visionary piece than it is the integrator piece. Well, and so if you've got the business piece, you can run a profitable business. There's no doubt. It's tough to be the industry lead unless it's like a low cost market, because if you're competing on price, you want a business person in there. I would be horrible at having a business competing on price, because I'm looking at all the opportunities to do better, do more, And so this is what franchises are for. Franchises are for those people. They said, here, you can't, don't have the skill necessarily to invent a new path. Here's a path, and you can make money at it and live a good life. So does that make sense? You buy it?
I'm buying it.
I do. I do. And I think too, if you're talking about that person, Diane, that makeup, right? If they're going to take a leap of faith and they're going to have that passion, then they might already possess some of the qualities of entrepreneurship. So maybe they don't think so, but maybe they're there. And then for those that don't, I think that they can still be a business owner. They might just not have that entrepreneurial spirit or quality to kind of take it to that next level.
Well, I think there's a lot of people out there that have those qualities, but they're afraid to take those leaps of faith.
Then they're not going to fit the entrepreneurial mold. Like that's the thing. There is a level of risk that fits the mold of the entrepreneur. In my opinion,
I think that's there. I agree it's there, but I also think there's a way to inspire them, that something has to drive them to finally reach that point where, you know what, I am going to take that leap of faith.
I have found that our culture isn't necessarily very kind to people who will become entrepreneurs, right? So we're wacky, we're willful, and so what I have found, the culture puts pressure on people to be much more sort of integrator-ish. You don't do that. And so I've had clients where after working with them for a while, I said, which are you more? And what they find is they're really at their heart more visionary, more entrepreneurial, more creative, and that they've stuffed it down and they haven't exercised it. And so when they when they work with me, and I'm like and that sort of frees them up.
Mm-hmm.
And I do see that where people are sort of boxed in because it's kind of not okay. I mean, people say this all the time, I'm going to start a business, and everybody tries to talk them out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
interesting.
And there's a certain spectrum too, I would say, it's like
there's a spectrum for everything.
Spectrum for everything. Yeah. I'm like a 7.5. I know like some visionaries are 9, and you can't box them in, they're just all over the place. And, so you do need a certain amount of that. I mean, it's hard to mask. So it's hard to imagine someone who's like really entrepreneurial, because it's hard to contain.
Well, I think that you've painted a good picture for us.
Okay.
I think that, and it's very intriguing. And I do think that as we talk a little bit about how EOS is entwined in all of that, and, entrepreneurship, you've hit on the points of it's tough, it's hard. There's a lot of challenges around that. So how does somebody start this journey, and how do they make the most of it, right? Like how, once they're or even on it, they've decided, they've took that leap of faith. How do they really, like I said, kind of live that best entrepreneurial life? And I know that we're going to try to touch on the surface today, but you're going to be doing a workshop on this coming up on November 2nd. So it's going to be 4:30 to 6 p.m. at the Howell Chamber, and food and beverages provided. It's going to be wonderful.
Brisket.
Yeah, brisket, living that best life. So I just wanted you to kind of touch on that and kind of what that means, and have a little bit of discussion and maybe a little teaser about what people can expect.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot to it. I mean, because when people go into business, whoever has that urge, whether they have the God-given skills to do it well, or whatever that is, when people start a business, they tend to have sort of the same ambition in mind, which is they want to do the work that they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
They want to make an impact in the world. Generally, they want to do good work. They see something that's broken, they want to fix it. They want to work with people that they love. They want to make compensation rather than having someone else take all the value that they created. They want a bigger share of that value. And entrepreneurs and most people want time for other passions. I don't really know anybody that really that's not 100% true, but most people don't want to spend 100 hours every week working on their business. Mm-hmm. They want to, and so this is what people are striving for, right? I mean, that's, they have got their specific incarnation of producing that, but they're shifting their lives to get a better life. And that's what that better life looks like to them. Mm-hmm. And an entrepreneur, this is why I love entrepreneurship. It enables us. And I tell people my passion is helping entrepreneurs live their wildest dreams. And everybody gives me an eye roll because it's, and this was why at the beginning I said, it's a long game. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so they start with that objective. And most people find, as I did, which is, we should all know this, but it's hard. It's really hard. You go out and do it and you find out, we're talking about whether you're a good entrepreneur business person. There's like 20 domains of business, and you've got to be pretty good at all of them. You've got to be a people person. You've got to probably fix your computers at first. You've got
to wear all the hats.
Got to wear all the hats. And so the key is, how do you over time learn, address, create a structure in your business that starts to produce that great life? Hopefully at first it's not a miserable life. It's just, I've been in business a long time and it's all been pretty good. You know what I mean? It's all been pretty good.
In the big scheme of things.
Right.
In the grand scheme of things. I've had times that were like insane, like awesome. And I've had some times that were like, not so good.
It's an ebb and flow.
It's an ebb and flow. But you're always like moving towards, and I think of it, I don't know that this is, I'm just coming up with this analogy. Hopefully it'll work. So we were talking about how you really like Mexican food. I don't know how, I picture this with dishes, and I do this. I just started making clam chowder. And so the first time I made clam chowder, it was like It was good. But I'm like, then I'm going to adjust it. Do you do that to your food? Do you like
when
make
I cook?
Oh,
I'm not really like a recipe follower either.
Okay.
And like if it calls for garlic, I usually like double it. Like
Okay.
I just, I know what I like and I make it happen. But that's when I cook. I do make some really good oatmeal cookies, but beyond that,
Do you adjust it? Did you adjust it over the years?
Oh yeah, I will. Yeah. And I love butter and sugar, so I'll always add extra butter and sugar.
Do you ever write it down?
Never.
Okay. See, I'm the same way. I never go by a recipe and I never write down how I adjust. So then it's like I can never recreate it.
So do you think it would be better if you wrote it down?
Sometimes.
I mean,
you write it down and make it.
You know what though? Because I would just sometimes disagree because sometimes like I'll accidentally hit convection bake on the oven and the next thing you know I've essentially like air fried my oatmeal cookies and they're phenomenal. Wow. But I would have never done that if I wrote down the recipe, right? So it gives me an opportunity to reinvent.
And I kind of agree with that. I mean, sometimes, yes, it would be nice because you're like, oh, darn, what did I put in it last time that made it taste like this? But then you adjust and compensate and put something else in there. And it turns out to be like the best one yet.
So did this work for you?
Kind of. I think it does. So, I mean, you tell me. So growing a business that really helps you achieve that entrepreneurial life, that dream life, it's similar to that where you start. And so if you were going to do these things the best you could, having some system in place. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I started clam chowder. I made a batch of clam chowder and it was good, but it isn't as good as Hamburg pubs, which is my gauge. Mm-hmm. And so I got another recipe. And so then I adjusted that. So when you start a business, you got to do what you know what to do. Mm-hmm. And then you've got to make assessments along the way. How's it working? How's it, and all the different things, with the people, with the customers, with the air fryer, all of the different facets of it, to be aware and to pay attention. And if you write the recipe down, have a practice, have a standard, have a structure in your business, it's much easier to consistently improve on what you're doing. And so
it does work. It works. I like that. Okay.
It's very, very true. But see, then I was thinking maybe I have that spark of entrepreneurial spirit in me because I am living on the edge with my cooking.
Diane's known for her cookies.
Oh, I'm like living on my edge with it. But then it's like, but like you said, that can only take you so far. I mean, for consistency purposes and for building.
I love the idea of having that structure in place to constantly compare.
Yes.
And make sure that you're improving.
And keep tweaking because it's all right to always tweak and change and grow and evolve.
I think it's essential. You have to because the world is always changing.
Exactly.
And I also like how you said you're on the edge because that's really where you find greatness, right? Mm-hmm. It's really on the edge. And so when you're experimenting and trying different things, and so you can experiment and leave that go, but you push the wrong button. You want a space for experimentation in business, but you want to systemize 20% of it. Mm-hmm. And leave some, a lot of it. And this is part of what I love about EOS is it's a very simple set of tools. It's really finding, what's that minimal set to structure to make consistent as you go so that you can pay attention to it. Because I did the recipe. I know if I did that recipe, the next time it'd taste similar. If I liked it, then I want to do that. If it isn't, I got to change something. So if I had a structure in my business and it isn't producing the results I want, I got to change something, and preferably I change it in some subtle way that some small way that I can track, and then I can check later. Did that taste better? Were those better cookies? And so EOS and structure in general is that minimal set of standard practices to consistently run in your business so that you have some baseline which you can improve over time and get to the point
of living that best entrepreneurial life.
Live that best entrepreneurial, and that's how it happens. You know what I mean? It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't, and to me, one of the things, just philosophically, I think life, as much as I'm all about entrepreneurship and success, it's about human life. It's about what that opens up for possibilities for people. Because I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning again in my 20s. And it was like, this is a fundamental part of being human. And a healthy life is a pursuit of meaning and purpose. And so as much as I'm a big fan of having big goals for the entrepreneur, for my business, at the end of the day, it really almost doesn't matter whether I get there, because the journey will be vastly superior. From my perspective, if you are seeking and striving for something that's pushes you, and that's a big reach, and if you get there, it'll be great. And the only way to get there is to try. Mm-hmm. But by trying doesn't mean you get there. But the journey is better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's talk about failures, because when you're trying and you're going back and forth and you're constantly striving to improve, not everything you do is going to work.
No.
And you're going to have those failures.
True story. Yeah. And so the first four years that I was in business, everything worked. It was like scary, and it was very uncomfortable. I was like waiting for that shoe to drop.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and I wasn't sure what I was doing right. And then we lost $100,000 in a month, and it was like,
there
huge.
it is.
There it is.
Shoe just dropped right on the carpet.
Oh my God. Yeah. And so the failures are the best teachers.
Absolutely.
And I think, I can't remember if I was talking to you, Janelle, but I think part of being an entrepreneur is like this pathological optimist, being positive in spite of all available data. It's like no matter what, being able to say, oh, I can fix it. Oh, I can fix it. Oh, I can fix that. And so, those failures, they're amazing data points. They suck and I don't like it. But that is what allows you, and you can't live life without failure,
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out, what we're learning about biology is the less failure you have. I mean, it's a miserable life, it turns out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that whole framework to me is not very powerful. Using that language, is a failure. And we talk about this in science, right? There's no failed experiment.
Mm-hmm.
It's all data. I was listening to this podcast. This guy was talking about how we're really resistant to do things and learn new things because it's painful, right? Because I suck at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing this new thing, and nobody likes to suck at it. And he was talking about AI, and he said you have to be more AI, because you teach AI a new game and it's horrible at it. You can beat it
Mm-hmm.
it a lot of times, and every time you beat it, it goes like, ooh, what happened there? It doesn't go like, oh, I'm stupid.
Yeah.
And it just learns from that, and it just learns from that. And so what we're out doing all the time, and this was what the guy said, is no, what you're doing is you're gathering data.
Yeah.
You're learning from the environment.
Flip that lens, right?
Yeah.
Shift
and
that perspective.
That's been very helpful, that little lens for me.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for sharing. I know we didn't have a chance to touch on too much, but we will have Matt and Andrew Darlene, who are, in my opinion, living their best entrepreneurial life, and who you've worked with as part of our series as well, that will be coming on, kicking off with us on November 2nd. So
yeah,
we will have all of the information in the show notes for people to register. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we conclude today, Kevin?
Yeah, I just want to say a little bit about that, because, I'm really excited about this, because there's a lot that we do in terms of structures for business that people wonder about and they're not really sure. And so to me, we've got me there to talk about, okay, here's the structure, but then we've got the Darlenes who lived it, mm-hmm. and have the benefit of it. And so it's like, I can say, well, this is what a core value is. Tell us about what that matters to you and how that has affected your capacity in business, because what they are producing is a work of art. It is a work of art, and they are going to change the industry they're in.
They are. And the story is remarkable. But what I found intriguing about something that you said earlier in our discussion is that entrepreneurs, they typically have other hobbies too,
yes.
right? And the Darlenes are living that, and they're proof of that. And they also go sailing, and that is one of their hobbies.
Yeah.
So by land or sea, they'll get it done.
By air or sea.
By air.
Yeah, air or sea. That's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, training starts on the ground, technically. So... Training. Sorry.
Oh, right.
Flights,
right.
Okay, no. So thank you so much for joining us today. We are looking forward to the kickoff on November 2nd. So living your best entrepreneurial life, and all the information will be in the show notes. So until next time.